Ron Raw, and you're watching Atheist Edge.
All right, we're going to jump right back into this from where we left off on my PowerPoint presentation. If you guys haven't seen the PowerPoint presentation yet, go check it out. The link is in the video description, but don't do it now because you're watching this. Go do it afterwards. I will actually link at the very end of this video card to it and a link to subscribe like I try to do, but I usually forget. So anyways, what this is going to be is a little Q&A for the people in my live chat, my moderators, and people that come to my channel to ask me questions about my PowerPoint presentation, whether they misunderstood something. That presentation did not go as well as I had hoped to. There were some technical errors. I wasn't really as eloquent as I hoped to have been. It's been a very long day. I'm very tired. I sat there for 3 hours trying to get technical difficulties down and figure them out. And I've been sitting here for a very, very long time, very uncomfortable. So please forgive me if it wasn't my best presentation I've ever had, but I think the information was good. I think I got all that correct, and that's really the goal, right? The goal, as I've said, is to put out correct information. Whether you disagree or agree, I want the material facts to be correct because I guarantee it. If you go look at any of the citations I had, you will see what I see. So anyways, let's jump right into it. Let me see. Kawasa's here, John Park, The Real Jacob, Tristan. The Real Jacob says, doesn't make sense to ask a question when I don't know what was discussed. Fair enough. Well, it doesn't actually have to be in the PowerPoint presentation. If you want to know something about atheism and Gnosticism, please ask me. My voice is shot. I'm not going on camera. But I will give out maybe the link toward the end. I don't know. But I'm very, very exhausted. I'm very, very tired. It's been a very, very brutal day. And I just want to have a beer and be done with it, or in my case, scotch, but whatever. Okay, so let me wait for people to kind of join us here because I know it takes some time when I start doing these types of on-air hangouts, which, by the way, I think are going away near the end of the year. But The Real Jacob, yeah, you need to watch the actual video. So please, when this is done, go watch the video. But by all means, feel free to ask me any questions in the interim. What my presentation was about to explain to people the material facts surrounding atheism and Gnosticism, which are not being put out by atheist communities. That are not putting out by atheist channels. These were things that I will guarantee are logically the case, material facts to be the case, and of course my own personal opinion, which I noted was my own personal opinion. I think that one of the reasons why a lot of these atheist communities don't put out the whole big picture is because they don't want people to know it. I am convinced that many of them do understand it, and they do understand that what I'm telling out to people is correct. But they don't want people to understand that. They want people to take the atheist label under all conditions to get the numbers, to get that political power. And I don't mind that if they do it honestly. I don't mind, like, for example, a genetically modified skeptic. He does this, and I applaud him for it. He's upfront about it. He's like, yeah, Steve, you're right on these things, but I take the atheist label, even though I would be philosophical agnostic, because of the fact that I want to normalize atheism. I want it to be strength in numbers, just like Draper was pointing out. I get that. I've always got that. But when you dishonestly come to me and say, well, no, Steve, I'm an atheist because I don't believe in God, and that's the only possible condition, anything else is just wrong. Now you've left a logical argument, you left a rational argument, you've left a reasonable utility argument, and you've crossed into the realm of just being fundamentally incorrect. Let's see here. Sorry, there I was playing the video for a second. Yada yada. Please mention how happy you are that I am here too. I'm always happy that you're here, Yada. You've been around a very, very long time. You waved it back and forth between various hangouts. I think that you settled on here, and I'm very grateful for you for that. I appreciate it. I know there was a lot of other things you could have done, and I take it as a personal thing to me that you still watch my material. Thank you, Yada. John says, I understand it, but I feel there's overwhelming evidence that everything came to be natural without a God. So why not say there's no God? That's fair enough. There's a whole different video to be had on justification and justificatory conditions. I can't really get into that because it's just too much to get into. But if you think that it is the case that there are no gods because everything's natural, then there you go. Use that for the time being. Use that as your justification. Do I think it's weak? Yes, but it's still better than nothing. But because it entails it. If you say that I believe that everything's natural, there is no supernatural, then you have to believe that there are no gods to have a rational, coherent framework. You know, Rex, let's drink together. You know what, my friend? Another night. I might have people call in. I can't really have people call in because I'm not doing it that way. I'm really not going to be drinking tonight. I was just going to, metaphorically have a drink. I don't even have scotch. I got a little bit of rum left, and I got a little bit of a whiskey left, and I've got that same bottle of whiskey for forever now. Ralph Ellis, I thought Colin's going to be out. Yeah, I can't really call in, but if you want to message me in the live chat, I will do a one-on-one with you for 5 or 10 minutes because you seem to be the most vocal one that was saying that the logic was wrong. So the real Jacob says, yeah, but if you take the scientific point of view, then it's irrational to absolutely assume that God doesn't exist. I don't know about that. I'm not going to deal with absolutes. I think people start dealing with absolutes and certainty, they conflate the issues and they get things vastly confused, because to say I believe God does not exist does not require certainty. It does not require you say that God does not exist. It just means that you hold a belief that God does not exist. That's it. And for whatever reasons, right? All right, so I'm going to spend a few minutes just here with Ralph Ellis. Ask me your question, and then I'll have a one-on-one with you. Go ahead. John says, that's one of my main reasons for not believing. Yes, if you believe there are no gods, it entails you do not believe God exists, right? Ralph says, before we head into it, please note that I completely agree that the forced labeling of others is disgusting and people should not accost you on that, like that. Hey, we're already starting off good. I agree with you. Mag says, maybe you've said this before, but for what reason do you prefer the philosophical definition? Well, go watch the other video. I give many, many reasons why. I show that the philosophical definition is the better way to go because it reduces all those absurdities and contradictions, and it makes a nice, simple system. The Raging Atheist. Okay, so I'm wondering why Steve is avoiding my question. I didn't see your question. I have to scroll back here. Did I miss it? Oh, here you go. Oh, I didn't even see that. Sorry, man. Okay, I don't have a question, Steve, but modern humans are at least 60,000 years old. I think much older than that, probably a couple 100,000. Earliest humans, I think, not modern humans, but first actual humans are up to 1.8 million, give or take, or 2 million. Religion concepts of God are at least most 10,000 years old. So how is atheism not the natural state of man? Philosophy doesn't give a shit what the natural state is. It's because the natural state is not evaluating the concept, right? The natural state is not knowing the proposition exists one way or another. So atheism would not even be the default. The default would be innocence, or Dr. Graham Oppie calls it innocence. Dr. Malik calls it uninitiated. So the default more so would be the uninitiated, or in the innocents who've never even heard of God or the proposition. That would be the natural state, not atheism. Okay, so scrolling down. Right, back to Ralph. You continuously posit that belief as a raw proposition when that is not in any sense what belief is, otherwise just simply be referred to as a proposition. Well, if you notice in my presentation, the proposition is something to be evaluated. It is truth apt. God exists is either true, or God exists is either false. It's one or the other. It's a true or false statement. Your beliefs on that is not true or false. Beliefs are not dichotomous. I can believe that truth is true. I can believe it's not true. I can believe it's false. I can believe it's all bullshit. I can believe that the whole proposition is not even a proposition. There's many different beliefs that can be had. Beliefs are not dichotomous for that reason. So when I say that belief is propositional, that's why Stanford says that the belief means that you're holding the proposition of theism to be false. Clockwork. Okay, I'm out. I have my reasons for not believing in any deity. Ask me why. Eventually I will. That's a justification condition, right? Ralph Ellis again. A belief held, whether affirmative or negative, is a positive belief. Yes, that's actual Russell that said that. On propositions, a negative belief would be saying like, I believe there are no gods. That is a positive belief. You're making a positive belief, a positive claim about an ontological negative, right? So you're making an epistemologically positive claim about an epistemological or ontological negative. No, the lack of belief is not a zero. No, see, this is where you make a mistake, Ralph. A belief held, whether affirmative or negative, the negative is, right, in this particular case for a proposition, it's not just I do not believe, right? Now, there is negative atheism, which is I do not believe. But the lack of belief is if you're making this into a dichotomy, then yes, you'd be right. If you're saying a belief held is either I believe or I do not believe, sure, 1 and 0. I will agree with you there. I don't know if that's what you're saying, but if you are, that would be the case. Not sure where you're going with this, but sure. Hayward said rocks are also not agnostic. You're absolutely right. And there's been people out there have argued or have said that Steve believes that rocks are agnostic. No, one time I actually said rocks were agnostic, trying to explain to somebody under their schema that would be the case. That's not the position I've ever held. In order to be agnostic, you must suspend disbelief. You must suspend judgment. Rocks cannot suspend anything. That takes an action that has intentionality. Agnosticism is an intentional state because you have to actually hold to that position because it's a belief proposition. Rocks cannot hold a belief proposition. They cannot be agnostic. Okay, so Ralph, yes, am I correct? My position is consistent with the qualitative binary concepts of belief. Your position is not. I just agreed with you. I don't know. My position is what you're saying so far, so I don't know where we're having a disconnect. Either you believe or you don't believe, right? Right out, Ralph? If the proposition is God exists, you either believe or you don't believe that, as I pointed out in my presentation. Real Jacob says, I don't believe rocks are agnostic or theist using Steve's terms because they haven't heard about the claim. Correct. They're innocent or uninitiated, but you can't call them agnostic because one, agnosticism is a belief position, specifically as a second order belief position, is a belief about a belief, and two, it requires intentional states that rocks do not have. The disconnect is that when one does not believe, they are not affirming the they're not affirming the contraposition, which I've seen you present. No, you did not, Ralph. This is a fundamental mistake that you have right now. Nothing in my presentation is what you just said. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Matter of fact, I was very clear to say multiple times this was a straw man against me. This is a position that I do not have. If you do not believe P, that does not mean you affirm P is false. I said that very clearly in my presentation. Anybody who doesn't believe that, go watch my presentation. So Ralph, you did not hear what you thought you heard, because I will tell you right here again, not believing P does not believe you believe P is false. Correct? Matter of fact, does anybody else want to chime into that? So I will say that's very clear. Not believe P does not believe P is false. However, all who believe P are false hold to not believe P. And the easiest way to understand that is all atheists lack a belief, but not all who lack a belief are atheists. That is a factual statement. Ralph Ellis says, then why do you constantly posit an atheist as no God exists? Ralph, did you not pay attention to my presentation? I went over this thoroughly. I mean, I really am not even going to get into that question because that question was thoroughly answered in my presentation. I don't know what you were watching, Ralph. I literally was saying that in philosophy, atheism is the belief that God does not exist, and I quoted all the sources. Yeah, I think Ralph might be a little drunk, or I think you might be right because you just asked me a question that I explicitly explained in my presentation, man. Oh. Take note, Stable K. Take notes next time. Thank you, Stable K. Yes, take notes next time. Gwen says, Steve, can you explain the difference between Gnosticism, I cannot make a position, and a theological and cognitivist, the question about God is nonsensical? Yes, great question. Agnosticism is a cognitive position because it's a belief position. It tries to evaluate the proposition. It recognizes there's a proposition to be had there, right? The theological and cognitivist says there's no proposition to be had there. If I say proposition God exists, they're hearing the proposition is blah, 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 blah. What is that? Is that true, false? Who the hell knows? It's not truth apt. You quoted Oxford, but not what Oxford actually says. First of all, please don't insinuate that I'm dishonest if that's where you're going with that. That is exactly what Oxford said, word for word, right out of Oxford Handbook of Atheism. I have the screenshot to it if you would like to see it. So I'm going to show that for you right now. I really, oh man, I don't know what to do with people just, you know, says things like that I don't do my due diligence, that I don't research this stuff. Like, well, that's not what it says. Well, it does what it says, and I'm going to show you right now. Unfortunately, I just got to find my little notes here. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen here in a second. Okay, so let me move this over here, move that over here, move that up here, screen share this. So I want people to look at this very carefully. I didn't show any of my actual evidence, and I probably should have, my mistake, but here we go. So, present to everybody. Will somebody in the live chat do me a solid and read this out, the yellow highlighted part, which is from Atheism under Oxford's Atheism Handbook. Tom, can you read this out for me? Good night, sweet heathen. Oh, wait, is that a different chat? That's a different chat I think I'm in. Yeah, sorry, that's an old chat. My bad. All right, so let me see here. All right, so I'm going to read it out to you anyways. So it says, quote, belief that there is no God or gods, arguably the most popular current usage. That is exactly what I had in my presentation. If there was any spelling errors or any typos, sure, I'll take the hit for that. But that is, I think, exactly what I put. I'm pretty sure that I double checked that. So when you tell me that that's not what Oxford says, that is exactly what it says. Yeah. Ralph says, yes, there's of course no possibility that Steve is actually wrong. That could never happen. Of course I could be wrong. That is a straw man argument, Ralph, and I think that you might be drunk. Of course I could be wrong. Show it to me. Show me the evidence. You all are a bunch of skeptics, and yet you just insinuate that there's a possibility I could be wrong. Sure, there's a bare possibility that unicorns could fly out of my ass and spit silver dollars everywhere. The chances are pretty damn small. But if you think that I'm incorrect, you need to show that I'm incorrect. Because I'm telling you right now, you just made a statement that is not what Oxford says. This is what Oxford says. That's my proof. So let me ask my live chat here. Is this not evidence that what Ralph Ellis said is incorrect? Is this not demonstrable evidence that what he said that Oxford doesn't say actually says that? Would you agree with that, Tom? He says, but he's not quoting the Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy. No shit. I said the Oxford Dictionary of Atheism. Ralph, pull your goddamn head out of your ass. You obviously didn't take notes. You obviously don't understand what I'm saying because you're straw manning me. I very clearly said Oxford Handbook of Atheism or Dictionary of Atheism. I'm sorry. If you want to even look here to see my notes, what does this say for the reference? Oxford Dictionary of Atheism. That doesn't say Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy. That's why I didn't cite it as such. Good freaking grief, people. So anyways, I'm moving on from that because I want that to demonstrate to you all when somebody who doesn't pay attention to the topic, when somebody who does not want to understand these topics, when somebody tries to straw man me, this is what happens, you know? So why are you quoting a dictionary of atheism as a philosophical source? Because it is considered to be a philosophical source. Most of that stuff actually is peer reviewed in there, but even still, you know, I quoted other source. If you don't like that source, go ahead, look at SCP, go look at Cambridge. Cambridge says that. So, Doorknob Ellis wasn't taking notes. He's in the back row. Yeah, you get to go sit in the corner, Ralph. You're done for a little while because I just can't handle dishonest interlocutors. When somebody tells me that that's not something. That's not what it says. It's like, oh no, I'm not triggered, dude. This, what's funny is, oh my god, this is such trivial stuff to me, right? I mean, I get this stuff every single day, so I cannot even afford to get triggered. Too much emotional investment to get triggered. But I am passionate, right? And people confuse the two. But I want to demonstrate to people that when people actually try to argue against me, almost always they have the material facts wrong. Like really always do. Dr. Drywell says, quoted in an Oxford source too. Yes, I'm well familiar with that source as well. I've actually read the Oxford Handbook of Atheism, or excuse me, the Oxford uh, Handbook of Atheism. I'm familiar with Steele Bullivant's paper in there, and Martin's paper, and actually Alpi's paper in there. I don't think he's read those articles, so I really don't think he understands material well enough, because I can get into great detail about those papers. They don't argue what he thinks they're arguing. Matter of fact, Michael Martin, who's passed away, he wrote in the Oxford Handbook of Philosophy that negative atheism holds a burden of proof. Something I've said for a very long time. So if you're going to cite somebody out of that book, you might want to know who you're citing and what they actually believe, right? And none of them say that atheism is not the belief that God does not exist. Not Stephen Bullivant, who by the way is a theist. Not Martin, not Oppie, not any of them. What's Martin and Smith and Bullivant and Flew, all four of them, which are the main philosophers that run this narrative. What they argue is that they think atheism should be in the negative case. They don't say that's how it is in philosophy. That's it. So anyways, if there's any more questions, go ahead. If not, then I'm kind of going to end it, because I want to make sure that I get decent questions. And if people are just going to straw man my arguments more, it doesn't really do me any good. Daryl says, it's not about counter arguments. I'm talking about Steve's general attitude. He wants to debate, but as soon as something is presented to attacks, well, yeah, that's how you debate. I will counterattack somebody giving me false information, or counterattack with them with actual evidence. I have all these citations. I have literally screenshots for all these things, right? So if somebody gives me something that is materially incorrect, I will show them why they're incorrect, Steve, what is your definition of Aleph? I don't know what even that is, Tristan, sorry. Abba, can you scroll up a little to my question request to your above? Sure. Abba, scrolling up. Boy, how far do I got to go up here, man? Did I go too far? Could you cut and paste it? Because I'm not seeing anything, buddy. ABA. No. Yeah, I'm not seeing your private. Sorry, I'm not seeing your prior post. Eric says, if I still don't get it yet, should I just say non-believer? Which is fine, right? That's correct. But the problem is non-believer is not really undescriptive, right? It's nondescript, right? Oh, I'm a non-believer. Okay, well, that doesn't tell me what you believe. It's not that it's incorrect, but it's just like saying, well, I don't want chicken for dinner. No, I don't believe I want chicken. Okay, what the hell does that mean? The real Jacob says, but aren't philosophical textbooks all like opinions and dictionaries? The philosophical handbook, the Oxford Philosophical Handbook, are opinion pieces. Yes, this is why they're not, solid philosophical literature as far as like the SEP. The SEP are peer reviewed, more than just opinion. That's what the gold standards are. These are things that are prescriptive. The Oxford Dictionary, or excuse me, the Oxford Handbook of Philosophy is not that way. It's a bunch of opinion pieces. This is why I don't use the label agnostic philosophy, which is fine, but that doesn't make that to me. That doesn't make sense to me. There's a difference between an opinion piece and a more prescriptive piece, right? Is atheism incompatible with an objective morality? No. Most atheist philosophers I know tend to objective morality. Yeah. Um, it's just only because they understand objective morality better than the average person, and objective morality is a legit thing. So, if I had one prior, Dan says, if someone claimed atheism equals non-theism by this is definition, then by the law of excluded middle, agnosticism can't be, it is, or is it semantics? If that's the case, then agnosticism would be atheist, but so would theological and cognitivism, so would apatheism, so would my TV, so would my left testicle. All those things would be atheist, which is just absurd to me. Venek said, do you still use the term apathetic theological and cognitivist? Thank you for pointing that out. I do not. And let me explain to you why. And I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm still apathetic. I do use that, but I don't say that unless somebody asks me. I think it's too unwieldy, but I am apathetic only for the fact that it's not so much the case that I care whether God exists or not, as much as the arguments. I do not hold to theological and cognitivism any longer because I've worked past it. I think the proposition is truth apt. I've realized that my positions needed modification. This was 3 or 4 years ago I held that position. I've modified my position, so my positions can change. But it's one of those things that people, if people say, well, you don't change your position at least once a year or every so often, you're not really a critical thinker. And that's something I've changed my position on, yes. I didn't really hold to it very strongly, though. I even said back then I was more of a partial theological and cognitivist, meaning that I tended to it, but not really a position that I held, I guess, right? Charlie says, so being agnostic means that someone is a weak atheist or weak theist. They're both. An agnostic is both a weak theist and a weak atheist. You don't agree with being a theist, or you don't agree with being an atheist. I'm neither. I'm neither a theist nor an atheist. But one of the arguments was I didn't get into this presentation, or the presentation I just had, was that if you hold that agnosticism is weak atheism, if you hold that atheism is weak atheism, then you also got to hold that theism is weak theism. And if you don't believe that God exists, or if you don't hold the position that God exists, then you are a weak theist, which means that they can call you a theist. So it's one of those weird situations where and I have a logical argument for this too, but I don't want to get too much into it. But you're right, Heap has a really much better written argument for it. But if you use weak atheism to mean atheism, where you can hold to the position of atheism and not believe it to be the case that God does not exist, then by mirroring, without being charged with special pleading, you have to allow for the condition that if you don't hold to the proposition God exists, you are a weak theist, and the theist can call you theist. So at that point, you have somebody who's both atheist and a theist, also an agnostic, and it's just meaningless drivel at that point. So when you use these really lax terms, they create really strange things that can happen, logically, without being a contradiction, believe it or not. Yeah, Andrew, don't try to wrap your head around that. It's confusing, I know. If you want to go to www.greatdebateCommunity.com, look up my argument for why weak atheism equals agnosticism equals weak theism. I had Stephen Hoyt, who's a philosopher, logician. He reviewed it. He went into great myopic detail. But at the very end, he said it's a good argument. He says it is valid. He agrees with it. He thinks that the premises could have been some more detailed. And I agree with him, but I wanted to keep it very simple. So, Doctor says, I'm glad you asked this question, Doctor, because I did not get into this in my presentation. I should have, and I thought about it, but it made it go too long if I had, I guess. He says, etymologically and logically, atheism as lacking belief just make more sense. Steve is an atheist according to the more useful definition. First of all, etymologically, that is not what it is. Etymologically, atheism is the belief that God does not exist, right? The reason for that is because A in atheism is called the it's called the alpha privative, and that in the Greek here is not. It does not mean without. It means not. It's a negation. So if the proposition is God exists, the negation of that is God does not exist. So etymologically speaking, in modernity, that it is the belief that God does not exist. Now, if you're talking about etymologically in history, this is called synchronic versus diachronic, then yes, the epistemologically, etymologically, the historical roots for atheism would be not believing God exists. But to say that is the current usage of that is called the etymological fallacy, right? Steve as an atheist, according to a more useful definition, is your opinion, right? I disagree with that. I think it's less useful. I think the way I'm defining it, which is by almost all of philosophy, is far more useful. And you'll find that more atheists are coming over to my side of the fence because they're finding that to be the case. The people that come over to my side of the fence have become much better debaters. They go after theists with a much solid argument, much more substantial quivers in their arsenal. And if that's your goal, is to show that atheism is wrong and to promote atheism and critical thinking, then why would you want to have a better argument? So if you want to think that atheism, according to a lack of belief, is more useful, go ahead. But it does nothing for the argument. All you're telling a theist is, hey, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't think God exists. That doesn't do a damn thing to change their position. Not at all. It's useless. So I fundamentally disagree with you, Dr. Drywell, but that is a belief position. That's not a material fact position. Steve, you don't have a Gettier argument. You're weak on this. Well, I do have Gettier arguments, but Gettier arguments deal with belief first theories of knowledge. If you have something like justified true belief, there are Gettier cases for that, but there are ways around that. I do agree with Linda Zagowski. She has a paper on this. The problem with belief first theories of knowledge, I believe that's a paper. I don't quote me on that, but it's a paper that actually explains that all belief first theories of knowledge have epistemic luck issues, and that if you have epistemic luck issues, you have a Gettier potential. And so I agree with her on that. There are ways around that. They're called justified true belief plus. They're called truth tracking conditions, dealing with things like sensitivity and security, with modal possible world theory and possible world semantics. I am not going to get any of that, right? But they're truth tracking conditions to say what the person would do, the subject would do in the next possible world over, to try to avoid the Gettier conditions. However, they don't always work. This is why Linda pointed out that anytime you have justified true belief or any belief first theory, you're going to have Gettier type problems. But there are other theories of knowledge. There's Tarski's theories. There's semantic theories of knowledge. There's pragmatic theories of knowledge. So there's many different theories of knowledge out there. Jay says, what burden of proof does non-belief carry? That's going to be my last question, I think, because it's a great question. It may take a few to explain. But the burden of proof that of non-belief carries is that you need to justify why you're withholding affirmation. This is substantiated by Dr. Martin. This is substantiated by Dr. Malik. And what they mean by this is that if I say to you something along the lines of that I exist, and you say, well, I don't believe you, I think that's an irrational position. You're withholding affirmation with no good justification. I think it's irrational to hold the position that I do not exist without justification. They agree on this. Because there's only two states to be had with a dichotomy. You believe or you don't believe, right? And either one of them requires reasons. Why is it that you believe? Why is it you don't believe? Both of them have a burden of proof there. But burden of proof does not mean you prove anything. Burden of proof means that you justify your belief. That's it. If you want to call it burden of justification, do so. That's what it is. That's it. Burden of proof is burden of justification. George says asymmetrical, not symmetrical, atypical equals not typical, atheist equals not theist, simple. That is called a etymological fallacy and a grammatical fallacy, George. I highly suggest you go talk to Dr. Jones over at the place. He's a linguist. He'll explain to you the a primitive in Greek and in Latin and in French. He'll obliterate that argument for you at any given time you want to ask him. It's completely not true. There are other positions, for example, like amoral. A rock is amoral, right? It's not moral or immoral. It has no potentiality to be either one. So an amoral rock does not mean it's not moral. What it means is it doesn't have the potential to be either one. And just because some words are used some way does not mean all words are used that way. Stanford Encyclopedia very clearly points out that the A in atheism stands for not, as in the negation of theism. And I'm going to show one last screen share before we all go away here, since this is a kind of a Q&A video. So give me 30 seconds here. And then I definitely got to end it. But one more screen share for the win. I just got to find the right one. This one here. And let me screen share. This is right out of Stanford Encyclopedia. And share. So here we go. Definitions of atheism right here. The A in atheism must be understood. And when they mean must here, it means not as a duty or obligation, but must be understood if you want to understand what these words are used in philosophy. As negation instead of absence, as not instead of without. Therefore, in philosophy at least, atheism should be construed as the proposition that God does not exist. Not merely lack of belief, not merely that he does not believe, but the proposition that God does not exist. Because negation here, again, as I explained in my video, if the proposition is God exists, the negation of that is God does not exist. You predicate that with belief, you have the belief that God exists, and you have the belief that God does not exist. And there's no longer a dichotomy. That is called a contradictory. I explain that in great detail in my video, my presentation on this. Link is in the video description. So you're fundamentally wrong on that, George. I'm sorry. You've got misinformation on that. Atheists have put that information out. They've never bothered to read Stanford, I guess. They've never bothered to do their due diligence, and they've just led you astray. I'm sorry. It happens. You trusted them, and they were wrong. That is a material fact issue, by the way. That's not an opinion. W.G.F. Hegel says, Steve, I have an Oxford education, PhD in philosophy, and professor of it. That's not what the A prefix means in A in Greek. The alpha primitive can mean very different things, again, linguistically. But A, in this particular case, the prefix in atheism, as Dr. Paul Draper says, is to be thought of not. Do you disagree with that, Dr. Hegel? Dr. Hegel says, citing SCP does not make it so. You're wrong about the etymology and the logic. Okay, Dr. Hegel, do you say Dr. Draper's wrong on this? Because also Dr. Jones agrees with this, and he's a linguist. So, but do you think Dr. Jones is wrong on this? Or excuse me, Dr. Draper's wrong on this? And do you have a citation from any other source that states it this way, other than Stephen Bullivant, who argues it should be this way, and Flew, that argues it should be this way? I'll wait for his answer. Yes, I do disagree with it. If that's what Draper says, he's wrong. Well, then let me tell you this. If you think he's wrong on this, what you do as a doctor in philosophy is you write to them and you explain to them right with a paper why he's wrong. That is how science works. That is how philosophy works, as you know. If you think that they are wrong, you need to show that they're wrong. You need to correct them. But so far, nobody's been able to do that with them. Nobody's submitted anything to SCP that shows that they're wrong. However, if you write a paper on that, I will get it to Dr. Draper. I will get it to Dr. Malpass. And if he thinks it's good enough, he'll give it to Dr. Draper. Best I can do. Does that work for you? What does non-theism mean? It doesn't mean I don't believe in God. Not theism means, not theism means that you're not a theist. There's a dichotomy, theist or not theist. I explained this in my presentation. There are many peer-reviewed papers using different definitions. Absolutely, I agree with that. But Stanford is the go-to, and that is something that is universal. That is something that is considered to be the gold standard. But it is actually the argument that Dr. Draper puts forth is something that I have not seen refuted. But if you think you can, please, by all means, I will be very happy to read your work. Well, of course they use different definitions. He says lots of other peer reviews use definitions. Of course they do. I never said otherwise. I've never argued. First of all, please do me a favor, Dr. Hegel. Go watch my presentation first, because I think you're just, kind of shotgunning stuff. And I think you're just kind of misunderstanding what I'm saying. As Hegel says, it's not the gold standard for introductory students who didn't do the readings. Well, if you, like I said, here's my email address. I will take on anyone by all means, and I'll get it to the right people, and we'll hang out on that. So here's my information. We'll get Ozzy and Dr. Malpass and have a little powwow. I love that. So that's my email. Kawach says, Hegel, can I ask for a few? I'm a layperson, like to know contradictory usages, how Steve's using it. Yeah, me too, actually. But Hegel says, I heard it 100 times, but you're wrong. I love you, Steve, but you're wrong. So you're telling me I'm wrong. However, every other PhD in philosophy that I know of personally says I'm not wrong. I have the evidence, and you're just asserting it. So what I recommend to you is that you show me I'm wrong by submitting to me in writing your evidence, and I'll get it to the right people, and we'll go over that. Isn't that how it works? Well, I'm assuming that he's a doctor of philosophy. I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to argue whether he is or isn't. I think it's irrelevant. Because I don't want to go, oh, he may not be a real doctor. I don't care. If he has a legitimate argument, I'm happy to hear it. You know. Sean says, if you brought up non-cogs don't see the proposition as not truth apt. Can you explain that in great detail? Sure. When a theological cognitivist says that, oh, God talk is meaningless, they're saying that the proposition isn't a proposition. They're saying there's no proposition to be had. It can't be true or false. Hegel says, yes, you're wrong. Not every other PhD says so. I have a PhD in philosophy. I don't say so. Well, I didn't say that. Now you're straw manning me. Every PhD that I know personally, that I've talked to on this, you're the first one that has disagreed with that. So now I say there is one out there that disagrees. But I would like to have your evidence for it. I mean, I can say, well, I know one that disagrees, but he has no evidence for it. I explain labels. Words don't have inherent meanings. I agree. But one uses take more sense etymologically and logically. I said this already. That's just your opinion. That's not a material fact. So far, no offense, Dr. Hegel, you've presented me no physical evidence, no citations, and no logical argument against it. So I'm happy to evaluate your work. Please send something to me in that email for you. You know. Well, I actually like them to check out my presentation because I want to know if those are material facts if he disagrees, because those are material facts. It is a material fact that Dr. Draper says this, right? That's a material fact regardless of your opinion. And blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Non-cog here's a proposition is red or true is false. No, they hear like just nonsensical nonsense, you know. When he says the professor says this, it's argumentium, authoritative, or curium. Yes, that's called a appeal to authority. Nothing wrong with that. There's something called a legit appeal to authority, and there's a fallacious appeal to authority. A legit appeal to authority is called a citation. There's nothing wrong with that. You cited SEP. That's a joke. Most atheist philosophers I met disagree with that definition. Well, I'm sorry. If you think SEP is a joke, that's your position. But no offense, Dr. Hegel. You presented me no evidence to evaluate. You just give me your opinion. Please give me the logic. Please give me the citations, not just your opinion. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. But if you can't do it within this hangout, please send me your work. And by the way, you have your channel has no videos, so I can't even validate your credentials. Should I validate his credentials just so I can get, since he has no channel, there's no videos on his channel, could be a recently created position or channel. Let me see here. When was this created? It doesn't even say. It's so new. So can you validate your credentials for us, please? I'll give him a few minutes here. I'm sorry. I know we have a delay here. Yeah, Kiyasa says citations would be greatly welcome if other PhDs agrees. I like to know about it too. But I'd like to validate that he actually does a PhD. He has nothing on his channel. I've never heard him before. MJ Demore right there. He actually is working on his PhD. He has a master's in philosophy. He says, I'm sorry, but SEG is not a joke. I've been around professional philosophers for half my life, and SEP is acknowledged as a reputable source. MJ Dory, I've known for many, many years. He's a very respected philosopher in the community. MJ, let me ask you straight up. Is SCP a joke? And 2, have I said anything that you constitute as incorrect in accordance with the philosophical literature? Dara says, do you have a PhD, Steve? No, absolutely not. I have no PhD. This is why I have experts in my community. This is why I have people like MJ DeMore, who's working on his PhD. And Dr. Alex Malpass, Dr. Graham Oppie, I'm having Dr. Graham Priest come in soon. Hopefully. Yeah, Dr. Graham Priest may come in this month, hopefully. So he's an expert in modal logic. Yeah, Steve, only people with PhDs can talk about this stuff, right? So only people with PhDs can talk about evolution. Yeah, I know. It's really weird. People have the weirdest argument. Oh, Stable, I'm not even going to go there. I will burn you to the ground, Stable. I know where you live. No, I have no idea. But anyways, MJ, let me ask you, have I said anything that's controversial in the topic of philosophy? Have I said anything that's incongruent with philosophy? And by the way, I really wish this PhD would actually validate his PhD, because he has no content on his channel. It could be just a troll account. Yeah, what is this Stephen doxings? Yeah, I've never doxed anybody. Yeah, never. So if you send me any credentials, Hegel, I definitely will not dox you. I've been on YouTube 6 years. I have a very, very, very outstanding reputation with many, many reputable philosophers. I've had Grant Oppie on this channel. No possible way would I dox anybody. I don't even dox people I dislike. I think that's abhorrent. But you got my email. By the way, did MJ answer my question? SCP is not a joke. I just popped in. But I haven't heard anything you've said. I've had problem with applying for a PhD next year, so I haven't begun that yet. Okay, well, you're well on your way. You have a master's degree. It's the same reason why people think Bill Nye is a fraud, because he needs a PhD. You don't need one. No, I agree. All right. So anyways, guys, this is going on a lot longer than I wanted to. I appreciate you guys coming in on this. Please go check out my other video, the link to that PowerPoint. I'm confident that all my information there is sound. All my information there is logical. If you don't think so, all I ask is that you give me some kind of information, right? You give me a reason. Yeah, no, I know W.F. Hegel, right? I mean, Hegel was a very famous philosopher. I'm not saying that's actually his real name. I'm assuming that he's not actually pretending to be Frederick Hegel. Okay, I get that, right? So whoever he might be in real life, I have to know, right? That's why I asked him to send me his credentials, to send me who he really is. I'm not a Hegelian. I think Hegelian dialectics are bizarre, and they're very, very Marxist in some ways, because it's adherence to the state. But Hegel says, I'm Chris. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Hegel. All right. So with that, I'm gonna leave you guys with my thanks for watching. If Chris or Hegel or whoever gets back to me, we're gonna have a hangout if he wants with Ozzy and a few other people, and we'll go over these things. That's what we do on this channel. If you can show me with evidence that I'm wrong, that's great. If you show me you're just having an opinion, well, that's a different story. We can argue opinions, but I want to know if the material facts are wrong. And I seriously don't think I am. But if you can show it, that's what our community is all about. It's nothing personal. People that take these arguments personal, they're not going to be around. There's no reason for it, right? We want to argue the discussions. We want to argue the topics, right? All right. So thank you guys for watching. Go watch my other PowerPoint presentation, and we'll see you tomorrow.